Coming up on The World Today. Derek Chauvin waives his right to testify at murder trial for George Floyd arrest. US President Biden announces sanctions against Russia over cyber attacks. Plus, France urges citizens to leave Pakistan amid anti-French protests. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin with news just in. The murder trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck as he took his last breaths, killing him. Chauvin just a while ago said he will not testify on his own behalf. He does maintain, though, that he did not kill Floyd. Experts say it would be unusual for a suspect to take the stand in their own defense during a trial. Before the jury was brought into the courtroom on Thursday, Mr. Chauvin was asked a series of questions about his decision not to testify. His defense lawyer, Eric Nelson, began by asking whether he and Mr. Chauvin had previously discussed his decision. Chauvin told the court, "I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today," referring to the constitutional rights to stay silent in fear of self-incrimination.
Chauvin, I'm going to ask you directly because the decision whether or not to testify, take this off, is entirely yours. In other words, it's a personal right. Mr. Nelson makes a lot of the decisions in trial, but one he cannot make for you is whether or not you testify. And he can give you advice, and you can take that advice or reject that advice. But the decision ultimately has to be yours and not his. Is this your decision not to testify?
It is, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any questions about your right to remain silent or to testify on your own behalf?
Not at this time, I don't.
All right. Does anyone promise anything or threaten you in any way to keep you from testifying?
No promises or threats, Your Honor.
Do you feel that your decision not to testify is a voluntary one on your behalf?
Yes, it is.
To prove innocence.
The VOA's Esha Sarai has been monitoring this situation from Washington. Esha, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to us about this development and how it's already impacting on the Derek Chauvin's trial.
Well, as I said earlier, it is not uncommon for defense lawyers to advise their clients not to testify in their cases. I don't think that this has come as a huge surprise to many people, especially given that we've heard from so many witnesses. This trial's been going on, I believe we're in the third week now. So there's been plenty of testimony from a wide range of witnesses, from medical experts to some of Chauvin's own colleagues. And again, yes, I don't think it's too much of a surprise that he did not testify. That being said, one of the police-involved killings that is on the minds of a lot of people right now is Philando Castile, who was fatally shot by a cop during a traffic stop in Minneapolis, the same city, in 2016. And I bring up this case because notably the cop involved in that shooting did testify in his criminal case and gave a rather emotional, teary speech to the jury about how he was scared for his life. So that is one example of a time when a defendant might testify on their own behalf, but it appears that Chauvin did not want to give such a testimony today.
But what happens here in the trial now that the defense has rested the case?
Yes, so both the defense and prosecution have rested as of today. As of this morning, it was a pretty short day in the courtroom as far as the days have been going in the past few weeks. So the trial is in recess until Monday, when both the defense and the prosecution will give their closing statements, and the members of the jury will begin their deliberations.
All right, then. And Esha, I also wanted to get an update on the Daunte Wright shooting. Yesterday, the former officer, Kim Potter, was charged with second-degree manslaughter. Could she also face the same fate as Derek Chauvin?
I think one thing that's interesting to note is that Kim Potter is currently only facing charges of manslaughter, whereas Derek Chauvin is facing both charges of manslaughter and murder. So the secondary charge of murder in Chauvin's case certainly makes the trial a little bit more intense. It's unclear, when Kim Potter's trial is going to happen and whether more charges will be brought against her.
All right, then, Esha Sarai, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you.
In the meantime, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has arrived in Kabul in an unannounced visit to come just a day after President Joe Biden announced that he has decided to withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan, ending America's longest conflict. Mr. Blinken told the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani that his visit is intended to demonstrate the ongoing commitment of the United States to the Islamic Republic and the people of Afghanistan.
That it's time to end America's longest war.
President Joe Biden on Wednesday night announced he will be withdrawing the last U.S. troops from Afghanistan on May the 1st to end America's longest war. In a White House speech, President Biden set a deadline for withdrawing all 2,500 U.S. troops remaining in Afghanistan by September the 11th, exactly 20 years after al-Qaeda's attack on the United States.
This is not the end of our relationship with Afghanistan.
Foreign troops under NATO command will also withdraw from Afghanistan in coordination with the U.S.
And decided that we will start the withdrawal of NATO rescue support mission forces by May 1st. Our drawdown will be orderly, coordinated, and deliberate. We plan to complete the withdrawal for all our troops within a few months.
And the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Kabul to show support after Biden's pullout announcement. It says the United States will intensify its diplomacy on Afghanistan and do everything possible to advance efforts to secure a peace agreement between Kabul and the insurgents.
I'm here to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to the Islamic Republic, to the people of Afghanistan. And we have a partnership that is changing but enduring. And as we've been discussing, as the President has said, we have a new chapter, but it's a new chapter that we're writing together.
Successive U.S. presidents sought to extricate themselves from Afghanistan, but those hopes were complicated by concerns about Afghan security forces, ending corruption in Afghanistan, and the resilience. September 11 is a highly symbolic date, coming 20 years to the day of al-Qaeda's attack on the United States that prompted then-President George W. Bush to launch the conflict. The war has cost the lives of 2,400 American service members and consumed an estimated $2 trillion. U.S. troops numbers in Afghanistan peaked at more than 100,000 in 2011.
Joining us now is geopolitical analyst Edward Opa, who joins us from Texas in the United States. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
The Taliban claims it has won the war in Afghanistan, and this comes as the United States plans to withdraw troops. They're seeing this as a sign of failure on the part of the United States. Is that your view as well?
No, that's not my view. I could care less what the Afghans are thinking of the Taliban. U.S. went over there for humanitarian reasons to help them out. And it came to a point where we realized there's no need to waste any American blood in a country that don't even have respect for their own citizens. So they can jump up and down as they want, that they have won. That's not the thing. The thing is that I'm glad that President Biden has made a decision, following what President Trump has started doing, that we're going to withdraw. So let us go. However they want to deal with their country, it is up to them to deal with it. It's not a win or lose. America said, we're done, we're out of it. And I'm glad that we're out of it.
You know, there's been a lot of back and forth with the issue of U.S. troop withdrawal. The purpose was to protect American interests in the region and, of course, to defeat the Taliban, which the United States believes has been planning attacks against the United States and U.S. interests. What sort of progress do you think America has made in the country and the region as a whole?
Well, I mean, if you look at the past few years, especially, during the time of the last president, there were no major attacks on the U.S. And interest is not permanent. Interest is oftentimes driven by time and you have to constantly evaluate your interests. So it's not such that we have to. Russia was there, they quit, and America went in, and so many other people have. And America has come to the realization we don't have to be fighting with, for a country or with a country that, first of all, don't even have regards for their own citizens. Everybody sees what the Afghans do to themselves, their women, their children. So why should America waste their resources doing it? So if whatever interest we have in that region, we can find that interest in other parts of the region that are going to recognize and appreciate America coming to assist them.
Well, it's quite interesting that President Biden has picked September the 11th, a significant date. That was the day America came under a terrorist attack. You think it would make any difference had he picked a different date?
No, it doesn't. I mean, politicians always want to have symbolic things, so the date of, because in America, every September 11th, there's some things we do. So maybe that's just a perfect date to say, hey, we are of this, whether we won or whether we lost, it doesn't do anything to us. America is still America. But the date again is symbolic because it's tied to the date. We had that Wall Street attack on Wall Street. But other than that, we will learn our lessons, and it's going to be very difficult going forward for America to be unnecessarily involved in a region or in a country where the people they don't even appreciate their own life. So I'm happy that a decision has finally been made, and America is going to get out of it.
All right, then, Mr. Edward Okpa, geopolitical analyst, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and analysis with us on The World Today.
Well, thank you for having me on your show, and I congratulate you guys for what you do to bring useful information to the audience.
Thank you very much. And now to U.S.-Russia relations. Washington has announced sanctions against Moscow in response to what it says are cyber attacks and other hostile acts. The White House says the measures, which target dozens of Russian entities and officials, aims to deter Russia's harmful foreign activities. The statement adds that Russian intelligence was behind last year's massive SolarWinds hack and accuses Moscow of interference in the 2020 election. Russia denies all the allegations and says it will respond in kind. As U.S. troops prepare to leave Afghanistan, France is calling on citizens to leave Pakistan temporarily because of violent anti-French protests going on across the country. The embassy in Pakistan has been warning of serious threats to French interests in Pakistan, saying protests were increasing nationwide. 2 police officers died this week in renewed clashes with protesters. The protests were sparked months ago after France defended the right to show cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Over in Europe, the Parliament's 2 committees overseeing relations with Britain have voted overwhelmingly in favour of the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. The committee said the Foreign Affairs and Trade Committees jointly backed the agreement by 108 votes to 1 with 4 abstentions.
So now I formally open the vote, and the result of the vote will be announced via email later today.
A positive vote for the TCA means increased legal certainty for companies that are operating under very difficult circumstances these days, with the supply chains affected by Brexit and, of course, as well by the pandemic. So plunging our companies into renewed uncertainty would be irresponsible and definitely in nobody's interest. Prepared by the
Coming up after the break. Preparations are in top gear for the funeral this Saturday of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. The nuclear talks between Iran and other global powers have resumed today in Vienna after the attack on the country's nuclear facility, for which it blames Israel. Casting a shadow over the Vienna talks, Tehran on Tuesday announced its decision to enrich uranium at 60% purity, a big step closer to the 90% that is weapons-grade material, in response to an explosion at its key Natanz facility on Sunday. Calling the move provocative, the United States and the European parties to the deal warned that Tehran's enrichment move was contrary to efforts to revive the accord abandoned by Washington 3 years ago. Tehran's refusal to hold direct talks with the United States forced EU mediators to shuttle between separate hotels in Vienna last week, when Iran and other signatories held what they described as a first round of constructive talks to salvage the pact. To our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic, India has reported a record 200,739 COVID-19 cases over the last 24 hours, as hospitals treating patients report severe shortages of beds and oxygen supplies. In the capital, New Delhi, more than a dozen hotels and wedding halls have been ordered to be converted into COVID-19 centers attached to hospitals. New Delhi has also imposed weekend lockdowns with only essential services allowed to remain open. Here's more on the situation in India and other developments around the world in our COVID-19 Global Update.
India reported more than 200,000 new coronavirus cases over the past 24 hours, bringing the total infections in the country above 14 million. The new figures come as the nation battles a new surge in cases, which has seen record infection counts.
India has witnessed nearly 2 lakh new cases of COVID in the country in the last 24 hours, a very frightening number. And more frightening is the fact that this number is not yet the peak of our cases. The numbers are rising, and it's anybody's guess where this number is going to stop. There are all kinds of activities still happening across the country, which are likely to lead to further increase in these numbers in the coming few days.
In one of India's largest COVID-only hospitals in Delhi, patients are forced to share a bed as wards fill to capacity. Many other hospitals treating coronavirus patients around the country are also reporting severe shortages of beds and oxygen supplies. It's a similar case in the Philippines. As coronavirus cases surge across the country, hospitals in Manila are struggling with a new influx of COVID patients. The Philippines is battling one of the worst coronavirus outbreaks in Asia, with many hospitals in the capital in full capacity, while authorities face delays in delivery of COVID-19 vaccines. Elsewhere in Asia, Thailand reported 1,543 new COVID-19 cases over the past 24 hours, the sharpest increase since the start of the pandemic, and the fourth record rise this week amid the third wave of infections in the Southeast Asian country. While Thailand has up to now managed to keep case numbers relatively contained compared to many other countries, the new outbreak comes as many have traveled during the country's Songkran New Year holidays and with vaccination rates still low. Germany's Prime Minister has urged the country's 16 federal states to impose tougher restrictions quickly to try to slow a third wave of the coronavirus and not wait until a national law or measures is passed. His appeal comes as the number of confirmed coronavirus cases jumped on Thursday by 29,426 to 3.073 million, the biggest increase since January 8.
Now, members of a ceremonial unit of the British Army have been seen rehearsing near Windsor Castle ahead of Prince Philip's funeral. Officers of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, were seen on horsebacks on Windsor's Long Walk as they made their way to the castle. Prince Philip died at age 99 last week, and his funeral will be held at Windsor Castle on Saturday, April the 17th. The palace said long-established plans for the funeral had to be withdrawn and scaled down because of COVID-19 restrictions, but they remained very much in line with Prince Philip's wishes. Prince Philip will be given a ceremonial royal funeral and not a state funeral as planned before the pandemic. But there will be no public processions, and it will be held entirely within the grounds of Windsor Castle and limited to 30 mourners. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenny Olash Shoboale. Bye for now.